The Malay world, located between the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Comprised of 25,000 islands, it is the largest archipelago on Earth. In the 15th century, the Malay world was ruled by multiple sultanates, kingdoms, tribes and states who were connected through an internal trade network. Due to its location along the key maritime trade routes, the Malay world was a vibrant global center of commercial trade that connected the region with India, China, and the Arab world. Aside from its strategic positioning, what made the Malay world so precious was its natural resources, in particular spices, cloves, mace, nutmeg, and pepper that grew almost exclusively on these islands. The Europeans were infatuated with these spices and would get their supply through middlemen, in particular Arab traders through the Silk Road. For the Europeans, however, this wasn't good enough. They wanted direct access to these islands, and in 1497, when the Portuguese explorer Vasco da Gama discovered the direct sea route to the Malay world, he opened the gates of European colonialism to infect the region. Over the next 100 years, the Portuguese and Spanish, through a process of enslavement and exploitation, monopolized the spice trade in the Malay world. But they were just a precursor to a far more menacing colonial predator: the Dutch, who at the beginning of the 1600s entered the Malay world, and following the same path of their Spanish and Portuguese predecessors, used widespread violence and enslavement to monopolize the spice trade. At the end of the 1700s, after 200 years of domination, the Dutch were joined by another colonial predator: the British. In order to prevent territorial disputes, in 1824, the Dutch and the British signed the Treaty of London, which divided the Malay world into two territories: British-ruled Malaya and the Dutch East Indies, known today as Indonesia. But there was one region within the Dutch East Indies sphere of influence that was not included in the 1824 treaty. In the north of the island of Sumatra, the Sultanate of Aceh. A deeply devout Islamic state, headed by a sultan and his royal family. Under them, the Ulu Balang, the noble class, that served as military leaders and administrators within the Sultanate, who in return for their loyalty to the Sultan would be given their own land to administer. But in 1871, the Dutch and the British signed the Second Treaty of London, in which the British now recognized Dutch influence over northern Sumatra and the Sultanate of Aceh. On the 26th of March 1873, the Dutch declared war upon the Sultanate of Aceh. And by January of the following year, the Dutch had occupied the Sultan's palace and assumed that the rest of Aceh would submit accordingly. But the Dutch were in for a surprise. The people of Aceh bent their necks only in one direction: submission to God, and were more than ready to water the earth of their homeland with the blood of their martyrs. And so commenced a 40-year war. And during this war, in which unspeakable crimes were committed against the Acehnese, icons and symbols of resistance arose. With one such legend, born 1848 in Sumedang, Aceh, in the region of Six Mukim, Cut Nyak Dhien. The daughter of an Ulu Balang, Teuku Umar, Cut Nyak Dhien was born in the conservative Islamic world that was the Aceh Sultanate. When the Dutch invaded, Cut Nyak Dhien, with child, was evacuated from the region of Six Mukim, along with the other mothers and their children, as both her husband and father joined the thousands of brave Acehnese men who set off to fight the Dutch. But on that fateful day, when the news arrived that both her husband and father had been martyred in battle with the Dutch, cry she did not. For this daughter of the land of Aceh knew that the promise of her Lord was true, and swore revenge upon the Dutch. And so, when the famed resistance hero, Teuku Umar, requested the hand of Cut Nyak Dhien in marriage, she agreed, on a condition: that she too could fight the Dutch. He agreed, and an icon was born. Together, this husband and wife duo led a group of resistance fighters from the Acehnese countryside, continuously frustrating the Dutch in advancing forward into Aceh. With her strategic mind and natural leadership qualities, she coordinated and led attacks upon the colonizers, sabotaging Dutch supply lines, sabotaging Dutch military outposts, whilst using the dense jungles of Aceh to her advantage, as she would spring guerrilla attacks upon the occupiers. For years, Cut Nyak Dhien and Teuku Umar kept at bay the attempts of the Dutch to subdue her people. But the wear and tear of living a life of resistance in the harsh conditions of the jungle began to take its toll. And when the Dutch altered their strategy, with the introduction of the elite troops of the Royal Netherlands East Indies, known as the Acehnese, they began to tighten their stranglehold over the Aceh resistance. In 1899, Teuku Umar, the second husband of Cut Nyak Dhien, was martyred. Knowing that the Aceh resistance was weakening, knowing that the Dutch had far superior resources, knowing that her countrymen were seeing the futility in continuing to fight, Cut Nyak Dhien, her second husband now slain, assumed full leadership of her men and continued to fight, galvanizing her men with her defiant soul. She just kept on fighting. For 2 more years, she endured and persisted. The flame of resistance weakening, but not her heart. As her body began to break down to myopia and arthritis, her men began to plead with her that the time had come to surrender. But she wouldn't. This brave, pious, proud Muslim woman of the land of Aceh continued, until one of her own men informed the Dutch of her location, leading to her arrest in 1901. Fearing her presence may inspire more men and women to fight, the Dutch exiled Cut Nyak Dhien to Sumedang, West Java, where she died in 1908. After the capture of Cut Nyak Dhien in 1901, the Dutch commenced a final, brutal pacification of Aceh through genocidal means. Mass displacement, terror tactics, not only took the lives of thousands, but left swathes of the Acehnese population psychologically broken. By 1913, the last holdout of Acehnese resistance was destroyed by the Dutch, who proclaimed victory. But after 40 years of war, peace was never achieved. The Second World War saw the East Indies invaded by Japan, who expelled the Dutch. And as Japan faced defeat in World War II, they backed the right of the people of the former Dutch East Indies to be independent. And in 1949, Indonesia was born. Free from the yoke of colonial tyranny, the names of those brave men and women, including Cut Nyak Dhien, who fought against Dutch oppression throughout Indonesia, were elevated into national heroes and became symbols for all people fighting for that God-given right. Freedom to live.